There have been studies that have shown that children who were in kindergarten exposed to very rigorous academic work already, when they were in sixth grade, had worse academic performance than the normal control group and more behavioral problems at school.
Dr. Majors, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. I've been following your work for many years now, and I really appreciate how you integrate psychiatry and neuroscience with a deeply Catholic vision of the human person. Would you mind introducing yourself and letting us know more about your background?
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Rosemary, for having me. It's great to be here. I went to the University of Dallas for undergrad and then went to UT Southwestern for medical school. And I stayed there for psychiatry training in my residency. And then I was there on the faculty of psychiatry for 5 years. And then I switched and I moved to Harvard. And I've now been teaching since 2011 at Harvard Medical School in the Department of Psychiatry. And there I teach residents how to do cognitive behavioral therapy, and particularly focused on anxiety disorders. And I have a private practice that's also here in town in Harvard Square. And I'm recording this right now from my office in Cambridge. So,
That's great. I really appreciate also that, you know, even though you're teaching psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, you're able to make the concepts understandable to ordinary people through, programs such as your optimal work platform and your podcast.
yeah, that's been a real goal of mine is how do you have the highest impact insights that you can translate into things that everyone finds helpful? And these are all things that I find helpful and I keep practicing and I keep trying to get better at. And then, and I've just been surrounded by a lot of people who are eager to grow, and I've been helping grow over the years.
You spent years helping adults reframe challenges as opportunities for growth. Can you explain what reframing is and how it changes what's going on in the brain?
So whenever people get fixed on a negative view of some situation, there's something they're very unwilling to do. That is the best opportunity for reframing. Reframing means widening the view in which you're viewing some challenge until you can discover in it some new opportunity for growth. So you could have a kid who hates math, and let's say that he has always hated math and he just says, I can't do it. So he has a negative appraisal of math. That negative appraisal, when he's faced with math, actually makes it harder for him to focus. It makes his brain less flexible and adaptable. It actually turns down his problem-solving abilities. The negative frame governs so much of how the cortex works. If he could try to see the math instead as a game, as something that can be won, like with practice, it's a skill that you develop. And curiosity is the most fundamental reframe. When you're curious about a challenge, it means you're willing to start engaging it rather than avoiding it. Avoiding challenges makes you see them as threats. Ultimately, that leads to anxiety. But curiosity puts you on the path of engaging, learning how to tackle them, learning how to break them down into smaller parts so that you can get really good at each part. That's what reframing allows us to do. It just sets the stage for all growth. It's also this beautiful thing that as reframing is all about widening the context in which you see a challenge so that you're not just seeing what you dislike about it, but you're saying, okay, how is this actually giving me a chance to grow? What's the kind of growth this is opening up for me?
In optimal parenting, you point out that a child's optimal cortex isn't strong enough to reframe challenges on its own. And that's why they need parents to help them work through challenges. In the homeschool, what's the role of the parent teacher in helping kids have a positive approach to education?
There's so much interesting research that has been done on parenting and um, how it pertains to the ability of children to regulate themselves eventually. So that's the goal. Children don't have a developed prefrontal cortex. The parents do. So the parents act as a surrogate prefrontal cortex. So if a child, say, is having a meltdown, say that the lesson is too hard, they don't know what they're doing, and they're crying now. what the parent can do is find a way to connect with them in that moment. That's the first real movement here, is connection in the moment of pain. That connecting itself powerfully calms down the emotional storm. As long as the parent validates the pain in some way, and that's kind of to be empathetic, to be, I know that this is hard, but crucially, does not try to take the challenge away. To be with the child, to be helping them to calm down, helping them to regulate, but at the same time, showing them confidence that they, in fact, can engage this. I love the work of Eli Leibovitz. He works with Yale children who are struggling with anxiety, and he was the one who said that the 3 steps to help children through difficulties are compassion, confidence, and then no accommodating. You don't give in at all to the, whatever the outburst is. But you have to be compassionate and connect with it. Like, I'm here with you. I understand that this is hard for you. But then let's see if we can come up with another way. Let's see. And so as soon as the child feels the bond, they are more capable of being flexible. And they can start to think of new ways of approaching this challenge. And that's like so if connection is the first step, then confidence and skill building is the next. Thinking of, okay, how can I break this down into easier steps? And so if they can learn to approach challenges in that way, to be thinking, how is this a puzzle or a game or a mystery? How do I treat it in those kind of positive ways? Then they can start investigating in other ways. And then that built up over time is a new habit of learning. So it's a new tool of success. So there is a kind of dial to a challenge that children cannot manage on their own at first. And they just meet things that they're doing in their work, and it's just the dial could suddenly be on like way too high, and then they can feel overwhelmed and they can get emotional. By connecting with the child in that moment, the parent effectively is turning that dial down a bit. But on the other hand, if the child was completely unchallenged in the work, that dial was turned all the way down, there'd be no growth in it. So the job of the parent then is to show confidence in the child and help them to turn it up a bit, and to find that sweet spot of optimal challenge. So parents are there to help children see challenges positively, and in the challenge to come up with the sweet spot where they can have just like, what's the right level of challenge for this? Gradually then, over time, children can learn on their own how to find that sweet spot. And then you have the foundations of lifelong learning.
There's a trend to push academics earlier and earlier. Is it possible to be too demanding academically? And are there any rules of thumb so that parents can know when they've got the right level of challenge?
Yeah, so you have to learn for each child to identify when are they in that zone of optimal challenge. And typically what parents report seeing is there's effort grunts. There's little expressions of frustration. There's some trial and error. That's usually a sign of a sweet spot. But not all of the child's work should be like that. The general rule is 80-20. 80% of the work in a given period of time should be relatively doable, so that they get that sense of confidence that they're able to do it repeatedly. And that's how they solidify past challenges being made second nature. But then maybe 20% of it, or even 10%, that's a little more challenging, but not enough to make them not set that dial like to if you're thinking of like 1 to 5, you don't want to get to like a 4 where now they're all anxious or they're having stomach aches or having behavioral problems, or 5 where it's a meltdown. There should be this sense where, okay, now they're optimally engaged here, and the parent's job is to make sure that most of what the child is doing is very doable. Some of it is this optimal challenge range, but the goal is that there's this engaging of the challenge, but it's not overwhelming and it's not too much of it. So I think that we should be very wary of front-loading academics when the brain is not ready for it. So I believe that what children most need is an environment that makes learning enjoyable, where they see learning as a challenge, as fun, as a game, and not to be overdone with trying to hit certain outcomes at young ages. There have been studies that have shown that children who were in kindergarten exposed to very rigorous academic work already, when they were in 6th grade, had worse academic performance than the normal control group, and more behavioral problems at school. So there are countries like Finland where they routinely don't really have any academic work until like second or third grade. The children are like 7 or 8 years old. And that really does make more sense from a neuroscience point of view. The prefrontal cortex takes time to develop. In a 5 or 6-year-old, you might have 5 or 6 minutes of focused time available for work. You do not have a long period of time available for work. Now that does grow, and it's not exactly 1 minute per year, but we do want kids to have the experience of learning, to see the schoolwork as a kind of arena of growth. What you want is a foundation of learning skills, of learning how to tackle challenges in academic work, particularly by breaking them down into smaller steps that are doable, and then learning to practice doing them until they're easy. That is the most important foundation. And that can be taught in younger kids in very small doses. And then that can be worked up over time. But trying to give them too much, trying to force too much reading and spelling at a too young of an age has been shown to backfire.
Catholic Heritage Curricula's program is organized in 3 stages. Preschool through 2nd grade, the focus is really on learning how to learn. That includes learning to read, but also non-academic skills such as learning to face challenge, to cope with change, growing the attention span, things like that. Then in 3rd and 4th grade, the focus is more on independent learning skills. So that includes things like time management, how to move through the day from one task to the next without needing a parent to prompt you, and also basic research skills. In 5th grade, the academic difficulty level really ramps up. History, math, science, literature, that's where you get all the good stuff, and that's the main focus at this 5th grade on up. What we found is that in the earlier grades, less is more. In other words, we keep the academics short and sweet, not light, because the content is very rich, but less time consuming than other programs, so that there's time to develop the non-academic skills, which are still nevertheless essential for academic success in the later grades. We believe this means more progress in the long run, because education is more effective and successful if the student has a strong foundation in emotional regulation, independent learning, and self-motivation. Does this align with what you see in brain development?
Yeah, Rose, that is really very, very inspiring. So everything you just said, I think, is like a sum of all the best research I've seen on how to maximally help children to grow. So I think that you all are gifted with learning and common sense. Everything you said just sounds so common sense to me. At the same time, it's so rare these days, to hear people. So I think that congratulations. I think on coming up with that. It's very well done.
Great to have, our instincts confirmed. Many homeschool parents feel pressure to do more or to keep up. What would you say to parents who feel as if school isn't hard, they must be doing it wrong?
Totally understandable. I think there's a lot of parents who are very intelligent and engaged and want to do the best for their child's education. And so that's completely good. But if they try to rush things, or if they somehow end up coming across to the child as being over demanding, or somehow the expectations they have are not really appropriate. Like if they're expecting that every test has to be 100%, or that in every reading assignment, 100% of the words have to be known, beforehand. That might be too high a standard, right? That ends up turning the awkwardness of learning and growing into a threat. We want to celebrate the awkwardness of learning and getting good at things. That means the freedom to make mistakes. That means not being too concerned about outcomes, but instead focus on the process. For learning, curiosity is the most stable foundational process you could possibly have. When a child is curious, their brains have maximized dopamine. They are most able to attend and most able to encode. So curiosity gives a joy to learning. And whatever is learned with joy can be remembered with ease. So So if you want the child to have deep foundations, those foundations are best led positively by seeing curiosity in the child as like a flame that has to be kept alight and has to be protected. So if increasing the challenge increases that flame of curiosity, great, you're on the right path. Keep it up. But all children are going to have moments of plateauing. The plateaus are not bad. There's like often an inner consolidating that's taking place, but then you have to make sure that the light of curiosity gets relit, and so the guiding principle should be fostering their curiosity, helping them to have this kind of can-do opportunity mindset when they're facing academic challenges, to learn how to break things down in smaller parts and master them with repetition. But all of that can be done very joyfully. And I think joy and curiosity are the best indicators of being on the right road.
Thank you so much for your time and sharing your insights with us. If people want to learn more about your ideas, where should they go?
The best place to be optimalwork.com. That's where, in a sense, these ideals all live. We have a masterclass there that teaches people all of the essential skills of learning and growing. I also have a podcast, as you mentioned, the Optimal Work podcast. And so that's where I go through lots of ideas. My co-founder, Sharif, kind of guides me through different topics. Each week, a new episode comes out during the school year.